Hey people, my name is Clinton John Leon, and I have been a media artist for a while, but for the past several years I have been analyzing news media, often as it pertains to war and geopolitics. It's time to share. I want to share an analysis I did of the footage released by the US Navy of the strike on the Venezuelan cartel Tren De Aragua on September 2nd, 2025. In this case, I came to a different conclusion than the US Navy. This is important because this was the first strike in what may soon become a war of the US with Venezuela. And I am challenging the details of what the public was told about it. On September 2nd, 2025, US President Donald Trump shared a Truth Social post with unclassified video footage and made the claim that the US Navy had made a kinetic strike on Venezuelan narco-terrorists in the South Caribbean Sea, killing 11 Tren De Aragua cartel members. I'm going to analyze the footage. I will get a different number of neutralized human targets, namely 8, not 11, and give an estimate of what this strike actually costed the cartel in damages versus what it costed the US Navy expressed in US dollars. So here's the footage. Now, what are we looking at? We can quite clearly see a go-fast boat with people displacing a significant amount of water and making a narrow wake. It blows up, which is consistent with a kinetic strike, meaning they hit them with something moving quickly like a missile. So it has traffickers, it's loaded. Are they Tren de Aragua narco-terrorists? I'm not sure who they are from the footage, but it is clear that they are drug traffickers. And that's who they would likely be if they were coming from Venezuela. Some people have called these alleged narcotics traffickers. So alleged in this case is analogous to watching a video clip of a man wearing a helmet that protects one ear, wearing a baseball uniform, carrying a baseball bat, knocking dirt out of his cleats, stepping into the batter's box beside home plate, but the footage ends right there. The assertion is then that this is an alleged baseball player. Okay. He might be an actor playing a baseball player in a movie, but in our case, the movie is real life. This is not a Caribbean cruise. This is not a family of 4 enjoying the sun and sea. This is not a go-fast fishing boat. This is a group of men moving with a heavy mass of cargo. How much cargo? Probably more than a metric ton. Suffice to say, this is not an emergency shipment of Venezuelan alpaca wool because there's a yarn shortage in the US and grannies in Kansas just can't cope. They're running drugs. Given where they are from my calculations, I'm going to assume it's cocaine. The people look white because the camera is picking up infrared frequencies and the people are warm. So then why aren't the motors bright white? It looks to me that they are amplifying heat signatures associated with living human bodies and comb filtering out frequencies associated with running boat motors. Towards the end, the water looks blue and the fire looks red. It appears that the spectra used to generate the image shifted to visible light because the heat is causing the infrared image to blow out. Right before the explosion, the traffickers are waving what appears to be a white flag. Normally, in an interdiction, the US Coast Guard stops and detains the drug traffickers, sinks their boat, and confiscates the drugs. They blast a message to them in Spanish and English telling them to cut their engines and prepare to be boarded. This message can be heard a mile, 1.6 kilometers away. It is clear that the traffickers see something and understand its direction, but they have not stopped. They are still moving fast, making a narrow wake. Also, this is the Navy, not the Coast Guard. What exactly happened here is unclear. Here I'll look at the actual footage. Comparing frame by frame. and magnifying and doing some manual stabilization, it's pretty clear that at the top of the frame, looking at the boat, there are 2 traffickers and a third one close to the motors. This third one already begins to complicate the analysis. Beside this drug trafficker, there is something that moves in a confusing way. I thought it was a person, or possibly a person, for a while. But after analyzing frame to frame, it's quite clear that's somebody's arm moving up and down. And you can also make out his leg. Moving to another troublesome spot. By symmetry, you would think this is potentially a drug trafficker. And I do think that's what it is. You can see that his head is above the side of the boat, and the packages are not above the sides of the boat. It's a little bit hard to see, but using multiple frames, looking at some different ones, comparing it to this other view of the boat, we see that at the back of the boat, there's nobody there. They've all moved to the front because they're trying to get away from the engines, because usually the engines are targeted in order to stop the boat from moving. Why they wouldn't just stop the boat is questionable. So here we can see it does appear that his head is sticking up above the side of the boat, so that's going to be our next narcotics trafficker. Right above him in the frame is a confusing spot. There's different colors going on here, and there's motion that's not entirely clear. It's complicated because it's between 2 traffickers there. So what happens here, though, is I'm pretty sure, looking at the way the packages are arranged, it looks like those are packages and they're partially blocked by one of the traffickers. This part of the video footage is quite tricky, I would think. It does look like there might be 3 traffickers there. There are definitely traffickers there. How many? It looks like there are possibly 3, but I'm going to say there are 2, and it's complicated. So that's trafficker 5. That's trafficker 6. If you look at what's to the right of them, it kind of looks like there's a head, but there's no body. So if you look at the line of the way that these packages are lined up and positioned, it actually seems to me to be 2 packages partially blocked by these 2 traffickers who are near the side of the boat. Here's another very confusing spot. There's seems to be a lot going on with packages, traffickers, and structures. So looking at a couple frames here, we can see this bright spot is actually part of the boat. It's structural. Looking at the footage again, we can see that there appear to be 2 traffickers at this spot. One of them is seated on that structural element. The other appears to have his head level above the other's knee and below the head level of the ones to the left of him in the frame. He might be kneeling down and working on something, but it appears that there is somebody on the structural element and somebody presumably in front of him. They are possibly both working on something. So those are drug traffickers 7 and 8. This whole region is quite confusing, and it is difficult to tell what is going on here. So there are some structural elements above them. They keep moving exactly when the boat is moving, exactly how the boat is moving. And that might be some kind of control system that they have for the boat. But it's not a person. So when we count the human targets, there are 8. So that's the 8 targets that there are. This Go Fast boat looks to be using 300 to 350 horsepower, possibly Suzuki motors. A Suzuki motor like that costs maybe $35K. The cost of the motors is then $140K. We know how big they are, and therefore we can estimate the size of the boat to be 36.5 to 38 feet. And the boat would cost maybe $200 to $300K or more. So about $250,000 American dollars. We can use some images of what bricks of cocaine look like and get an estimation for how big those packages are. They end up being roughly about 45 kilograms, which is close to 100 pounds each, which is pretty heavy. And they're packed in the boat in 3 columns in 8 or possibly 9 rows. That gives us an estimation of what this would have actually costed the cartels. The cocaine cost to cartels in 3 columns, 8 or 9 rows, is about $2.16 million to $2.43 million. That brings cartel damages to $2.3 million to $2.7 million for the drugs in the boat, 8 cartel members, and the disruption of their operations. The operational cost to the U.S. depends on what kind of strike it was. If it was an AGM-114 Hellfire missile, which is commonly used, that would be between $150 to $180K. I estimated maybe 2 hours of a Seahawk or Seahawk variant operation, which is at $5,000 per hour, bringing the cost of that to $160 to $190K. If it came from an MQ-9 Reaper drone, I'm not exactly sure how much that would cost, because those Reaper drones are constantly surveilling the seas, constantly. So I'm not exactly sure how much that would cost. If it was fired from a Seahawk or Seahawk variant, it could also be an APKWS, Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System, which costs about $35,000, making the cost of the operation about $45,000. So the ratio of cartel damages to U.S. cost, depending on whether it was a Hellfire and it was one of the more expensive, or it was the lesser amount of drugs on the vessel, it's somewhere between 12 to 1 and 60 to 1. So the U.S. Navy may have destroyed cocaine worth, in street value, $115 million, killed 8 cartel members, and destroyed a $250,000 trafficking vessel for a cost of about $160K, possibly even lower than $45K. What would the Trump administration say about this? We don't have to guess.
Every tyrant and adversary on the planet knows their choice is very simple. It's leave America in peace or be blown up in fire and fury never seen before. It's called the Gulf of America now, and nobody's playing games with it.